Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about GameStop and about AMC. You've probably heard about the stock price of these shares going through the roof and then coming back down to earth. In this video, I'll talk to you about why it happened, what it means to you, and what you should do going forward. And I'll also outline my investing strategy and my approach towards this. I do believe that the GameStop story is a sign of things to come. But I do want to warn you that if you do something like this, there's a very high probability that you could end up losing money. In this video, I'll go over exactly why this happened and exactly what you should do next. Welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. This right here is a little bit of information about me. You'll learn more about who I am, what my journey has been like, and why you should listen to me. This channel, the Ignition Time channel, is about the country, it's about the economy, and it's about your money. In our country, in the United States of America, the way the laws are written, the way the systems are, is that the big hedge fund managers, those who manage hundreds of billions of dollars, including a hedge fund at the top of the pecking order in the GameStop situation, Melvin Capital, they've been doing what's called as short selling, short interest in a stock. In other words, selling the stock. Now, what's unusual about the GameStop story is that there was 136% short interest, which means more shares were shorted than the number of shares that actually existed of the company. This right here is the flaw within the system of our country, within economics, that actually allowed this to happen. Now, I have heard a lot of big hedge fund managers and I've seen a lot of hosts on financial networks saying, oh, this was market manipulation. Guess what? Big hedge funds have been doing this for a long time and they've had access to data which now the little guy like you, like me has. The little guy now has access to data now through our own communities, can actually manipulate the market and do this in a way that is fundamentally legal. Yes, it is fundamentally legal, believe it or not, because the hedge funds have been doing this for a long time. There are 2.7 million people inside that Reddit group Wall Street Bets that kicked off this whole thing. Imagine if 2.7 million people identify a stock that has a significant amount of short interest, because remember, when a stock has short interest, the people, in this case the hedge funds that have shorted the stock, have to buy back the stock in order to close their position. So knowing that there's a significant amount of short interest, what if individuals simply start buying the stock and refuse to sell it? At some point, those with the short interest, in this case, Melvin Capital and the big hedge fund managers, will have to close out their position. And in order to close out their position, they're looking to buy. What if no one is selling? Then they start offering more and more and more money in order to be able to close out their short position. Before I tell you the mechanics of how the GameStop situation happened and what I think we can learn from this and why I think this is the future of things to come, I do want to highlight that the reason this happened is because hedge funds were allowed to go short on a stock to an extent that was greater than the number of shares available of that company. The fact that there was 136% short interest, in other words, hedge funds were able to sell more shorts than there were number of shares, that is the source of the problem. If that was not allowed and if the regulators decide to plug that gap, then something like this will never happen again in the future. Also, what this group Wall Street Bets did on Reddit is something that these big hedge funds have been doing for a long time. High frequency traders have been doing for a long time. In fact, there have been situations in the past when these hedge funds made tons and tons and tons of money using these exact same strategies, which several years ago you couldn't do them, I couldn't do them, because we didn't have that access to data. We didn't have the ability to buy shares at zero commissions. We didn't have access to the computing power that we have now. They've been doing this for a long time and they've been making tons and tons of money. And guess what happens when these big hedge funds make tons and tons of money? Someone else is left holding the bag. I want you to remember one thing: in the stock market, when one side makes money, the other side loses money. In the end, when people make money in the stock market, there's somebody on the other end losing money. For years and years and years, big hedge funds have made money while the little guy has been left holding the bag. People's 401ks have been wiped out. Children's college tuition savings have been wiped out. So now finally the little guy has a chance to fight back. In fact, there were some very interesting comments from Mark Cuban from Shark Tank today and Chamath Palihapitiya, a billionaire investor, and I'll be highlighting those comments. But first, I want you to understand exactly how the GameStop situation happened, because I assure you this will happen again in the future. It will continue to happen, and regulators plug the gap and prevent a short squeeze to the extent that more shares can be shorted than the number of shares available in the market, because that is the source of the problem. And I believe at some point, I do believe regulators will take a look at it. In fact, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi actually commented on it today. And I'll be showing you a segment of her comments as far as GameStop was concerned. But first, let's try and understand exactly how this happened. What exactly is a short squeeze? Another phenomenal YouTuber, Graham Stephan, you should definitely check out his channel, outlined exactly how a short squeeze works and how the GameStop situation happened. I'll play a short clip from his video and I'll provide you with the link to his video in the description section below. Let's take a look at Graham Stephan explaining exactly how a short squeeze works, and then we'll take a look at comments from Mark Cuban, Chamath Palihapitiya, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi also weighing in. Let's roll the tape and hear Graham Stephan explain what a short squeeze is.
It was so shorted that more shares were shorted than actually exist in the market for sale. So that's turning out to be the perfect storm to cause this stock to skyrocket exponentially as soon as any good news comes out. See, this is what's known as a short squeeze, and here's how that works. When you think the price of a stock is going to be going down, you could choose to short that stock. Now, because it's kind of complicated to explain, I've made this really fancy Photoshop so I could explain exactly what's going on. When you short a stock, you first borrow that stock from somebody else at a preset price with the intention of eventually returning that stock to the person at some point in the future. Next, once you borrow those stocks, you could resell them immediately to somebody else and you get to hold on to that money. But since you owe that first person their stocks back, that money you get isn't all profit. If the price of the stock you borrowed and sold goes down, which is what you wanted, you could buy them back at a cheaper price, return the stocks back to the first person who you borrowed them from, and then the difference you have left over is your profit. However, the danger is that if the stock price goes up, you will be forced to buy back the stocks at a higher price, and when that happens, you'll lose money when eventually you have to return those stocks. Now, doing this is incredibly risky because when you go and buy a stock like normal, the downside is really going to be limited to the amount you buy in. So for example, if you buy a $10 stock, the most you could lose is that original $10. But if you short a $10 stock and it goes to $100, then all of a sudden you're losing $90 for every $10 you're investing in. And by shorting a stock, your losses could theoretically just be infinite, and that is where GameStop comes in. This Reddit user who posted here theorized that because so many people were short on GameStop, thinking that the price of the stock was going to be going down, eventually all this good news is going to cause these short sellers to exit their positions, forcing them to buy back those shares at a higher price, and when that happens, the price of the stock goes up, and when that happens, more people close out their positions by buying back shares at a higher price, and that continues until the price of GameStop goes to the moon, and Reddit users buy Lamborghinis.
So now that you see that, you're probably thinking to yourself, isn't this illegal? Is this market manipulation? Well, the fact is this is not market manipulation, because even if you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, a company like GameStop isn't worth $300, $400, $500. And the fact is it's not, based on valuations, based on traditional models of valuations. But the question is this market manipulation? Is it inappropriate? Are these shenanigans illegal? Well, Mark Cuban actually weighed in on this and he said, this is not market manipulation. This has always happened behind the scenes. The big guys were doing it before, and now Mark Cuban is basically cheering the little guy who's doing this, and he said that we could see a positive side to this going forward. Let's roll the tape and hear what Mark Cuban had to say, and I encourage you to listen to his comments very carefully because there's a lot we can learn here. Let's roll the tape.
Billionaire entrepreneur Mark Cuban says that he's actually a big fan of what's playing out between retail investors and hedge funds around shares of GameStop. Users of Reddit's Wall Street Bets forum have helped bid that stock up massively this week. Last night, Cuban tweeted, "I've got to say I love what is going on with hashtag Wall Street Bets. All of those years of high-frequency traders, front-running retail traders. Now speed and density of information and retail trading is giving the little guy an edge. Even my 11-year-old traded with them and made money." Mark, of course, as you know, is also the owner of the NBA's Dallas Mavericks, and he joins us right now on the Squawk Newsline. And Mark, I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I get it. I love the sentiment of being able to stick it to the hedge funds, and what the hedge funds have been able to do in some cases has been really, really bad news. But if you're manipulating market prices, I don't see how that's a good thing really in any scenario.
How's this any different than what every brokerage firm does? You know, we've been talking about get long, get loud for
it's not. It's not good. It's not good for the brokerages to be doing that at all either. I'm not defending that. It's just when you see moves like this, it's a little crazy. And I wonder what Doug Parker is thinking. I wish we could get him back on to ask him what he thinks about his stock being up better than 50%, because I would think that makes a company pretty hard to run, too. How do you live up to those expectations now?
Oh, but they're not expectations at all. I mean, look, the reality is you just have to run your company and do your best. It doesn't change the fundamentals of the company at all. You know, it so many respects is window dressing. And if you are an owner of American Airlines, if you're an owner of GameStop, hopefully, you know, prior to all this, hopefully you owned it for a good reason and you believe in the company. And all the not even manipulation, all the swings in the price of the stock, it's all just mishigas, right? I mean, if it's a good company, it's a good company. If it's a bad company, it'll end up going out of business. And, you know, the people who, you know, bought it just to speculate, some will make money, some will lose money. But that's just the way the market's always worked. The only thing that's really changed is the speed and the density and the reduction in friction for smaller traders to trade. That's the only thing that's changed.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's good news in terms of crowdsourcing, being able to have the same heft that some of these really big whales have on their own, if you can get this together. But we don't know who some of the people on the chat boards are, or in Reddit are on these threads who are saying some of these things, too. Do you worry that some of the Wall Street guys could get behind that, some of the big guys, and manipulate those things?
Yeah, but it's not really manipulation. It's absolutely no different than what has always happened, Becky. You know, it's just these folks are picking things where, you know, heavily shorted stocks. They'll go to low float stocks because they know they can flex and show off, you know, and let people see what's going on. But look at it the other way. What if they go after companies that are really good, or maybe smaller companies that are have a great social mission and get people not just to buy them in mass and quickly so the stock price skyrockets, but also to hold on to them, or, you know, in cryptocurrency terms, hodl them so that, you know, that company really can grow based off of the valuation of that stock. You know, so I think now it's just a flex. You know, they picked the right place to show off with these heavily shorted stocks. And, you know, hopefully they'll go to good companies too and help them grow. And we'll see a positive side of this that hopefully will have long-lasting effects.
Look, I think one thing this definitely does is shines a light on some of the behavior that regulators really should step in and take a look at. Some of the behavior by the hedge funds. If you're able to short more than 100% of a stock, if you don't have to disclose your shorts ever, if you can do one thing and you know, say one thing and do another, I think that there could be a call for additional regulation coming on that. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, if you're misleading, right? If you're pumping and dumping to the upside, or if you're shorting and misleading people to the downside, yes, that's obviously something the regulators should look at. But remember, when you short a stock, there's a vig on it, right? You have to borrow it, and you're paying some percentage to the whoever owns the stock and is loaning it out. And as someone who's shorted stocks many times, you know when that vig is high, you know exactly what you're getting into, and you know exactly what the risks are. You know, and you just hope something like this doesn't happen. But again, it's not the first time that low float or heavily shorted stocks have been targeted. It's just very visible, and it's just not the normal suspects that are doing the targeting. There are many hedge funds that have made a lot of money over the years targeting heavily shorted stocks. And so I don't think this is anything different. It's just the people who are making the push aren't who we expect them to be. And so that's why I like it. You know, when you bring people out of nowhere to really show the inefficiencies of the market, it's a good thing.
So now, shifting gears, now we're going to listen to comments from Chamath Palihapitiya, who's a billionaire investor, who's the man behind Virgin Galactic and a bunch of other SPAC companies. A SPAC is a special purpose acquisition company. I'm personally invested in a lot of SPAC companies that have been introduced by Palihapitiya. Chamath Palihapitiya says that this GameStop situation was pushback against the Wall Street establishment. All the hedge funds that have been doing this over the years, making billions of dollars, in many cases on the backs of the little guy who did not have access to the data, who was left holding the bag, who was left hanging because the little guy did not have access to the kind of visibility and the ability to do rapid trades like we can do now, which we couldn't do 3 years ago. All of this is pushback against the Wall Street establishment. Super interesting comments from Chamath Palihapitiya. Let's roll the tape and let's listen.
Next guest, he tweeted on Tuesday that he'd gone long through call options. Chamath Palihapitiya is the CEO of Social Capital. He joins us now on the phone. Chamath, thank you for being here.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So you tweeted yesterday that you bought $115 calls in GameStop. Can you tell me what your position is as of this very moment?
Yeah. Can I tell you a little story before all of that, or no?
Why don't you tell me that first, and then we'll go from there.
So this morning I woke up after spending all last night in Wall Street bets, reading about all of this stuff. I ended up closing up my position this morning, and I wanted to announce that I'm taking all the profits that I made, plus my original position. So I'm going to take $500,000, and I'm going to donate to the Barstool Fund for small businesses. But I really want to tell you, beyond the $500,000 donation or the money that I invested, which was, not a huge amount in the grand scheme of that stock or the entire market, what I learned, because I think what I learned over the last couple of days is important for everybody that's watching CNBC.
And that is?
I think that what you're seeing is essentially a pushback against the establishment in a really important way. You have a lot of people, and I would encourage anybody who is dismissive of this thing to go into Wall Street Bets and actually just read the forums. And I think that you're going to see three kinds of posts. The first kind of content are a lot of people doing some incredible fundamental diligence on companies, trying to think about long-term value. And in my opinion, many of them are doing as good and, frankly, a better job than a lot of hedge fund analysts that I work with. That's number one. The second are a lot of people who believe that, coming out of 2008, what happened was Wall Street took an enormous amount of risk, and they left retail as the bag holder. And a lot of these kids were in grade school and high school when that happened. They lost their homes. Their parents lost their jobs. And they've always wondered, why did those folks get bailed out for taking enormous amounts of risk and nobody helped and showed up to help my family? And then the third thing is a realization that instead of having idea dinners or, quiet whispered conversations amongst hedge funds in the Hamptons, these kids have the courage to do it transparently in a forum. And I'm not saying all of it is perfect by any means, but I think it takes an enormous amount of faith in the system to be that transparent, to talk about things, and then for each individual to make their own mind up and to do things, whether it's to buy and to sell.
And folks, you heard me mention our channel is about the country, the economy, and our money. Let me ask you, what are the interest rates right now? They're close to zero. In an environment where we have close to zero interest rates, in an environment where you have access to important data at the tip of your fingers, in an environment where you can trade at zero commissions, in an environment where you can join a group like Wall Street Bets on Reddit and you can get access to data, should you have that competitive advantage? The short answer to that question is yes. But what's really interesting is because we have 0% interest rates, because we have access to information, this now gives a retail investor an opportunity to compete with and to potentially stick it to the big hedge funds. And folks, also before we take a look at this next segment, I want you to know that there are fundamental analysts, there are value investors who focus on how much money a company is making, and there are what are called as momentum traders. A momentum trader identifies, seeks an opportunity like the GameStop opportunity and then makes a bunch of money. I want you to know that I'm a value investor, I'm a fundamental investor. Anything that I buy, I hold for at least 10 years or more. So I never invested in GameStop. To be honest, things happen too fast for me there. My goal is generally between 30% to 50% returns a year on my money, and I do achieve that, and I'll talk to you about how I achieve that on my channel. I'm definitely personally not looking to double my money overnight or in a week or 2 weeks, even in 6 months. I'm the kind of investor that wants to gradually make money through incremental value in my stocks and through dividends and through options trading. That's what I do. But first, let's listen to Chamath Palihapitiya, who points out that the rise of the retail investor is important. In fact, the retail investor, essentially represented by the 2.7 million people inside the Wall Street Bets group on Reddit, these 2.7 million people are as important, if not more important, than any big hedge fund investor. And why this is causing so much pain? Because the people at the top of the pecking order, the big hedge fund that got hurt, that had to essentially pay a lot of money to get out of their short position. Melvin Capital is a very well-known hedge fund, and essentially the small retail investors were able to stick it to the big guy by getting together, by coordinating, and by doing this. And I think it's safe to say that what they did was legal, but it was definitely in the gray area. But let's watch what Palihapati had to say and let's roll the tape.
I think that what it proves is this retail phenomenon is here to stay. There are 2.7 million people inside of Wall Street Bets. I think that they are as important as any hedge fund or collection of hedge funds. And I think the most important thing is that in a world of zero interest rates and quantitative easing, I don't know how you can run a typical hedge fund strategy and make money anymore. Because, for example, when you looked at GameStop, a normal person would say, how can you have 136% short interest? How can you be short 40% more shares than actually exist in the world? To a normal person, that doesn't make any sense. But to a Wall Street mathematician, that's the game that has been played for years. And that game came undone.
Well, I mean, that may be that may be somewhat of an extreme example. Let me just go through a couple of things you said here. I have a hard time believing. I mean, you suggested that there's a good amount of fundamental research going on underneath the GameStop Reddit situation. Do you truly believe that there's actual fundamental research? Not to disparage in any way the people who are actually making these trades, but this seems to be momentum rather than a deep fundamental analysis.
Scott, there's momentum in traditional hedge funds and how they move stocks as well. But it's really disparaging if the starting position is these guys can't do the same quality of research as an analyst in a fund. That's just not true.
I didn't say that. I didn't say they can't do that kind of research. I'm questioning whether they're actually doing the research when it comes to things like GameStop and AMC and some of these other things.
There's a distribution. And obviously at one end, there are fundamental analysts. But on the other end, there are momentum traders that follow trends. But by the way, the dirty little secret of Wall Street is that exists in hedge fund land. The reason why this GameStop trade has caused so much pain is because at the top of the pecking order was Melvin Capital. Those guys were incredible stock pickers. They are incredible fundamental modelers of companies. Okay, Gabe Plotkin is one of the sort of giants of our era, of my era, right? But at the end of the day, what happens is, irrespective of what he puts on, his trades are mimicked and copied by umpteen other hedge funds that follow along.
And folks, while all this is happening, the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi actually chimed in on this, believe it or not. She said, it's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting that this situation led by essentially a bunch of investors on Wall Street Bets, which is a Reddit group, made its way to multiple conversations on CNBC. Guys like Chamath Palihapati, even Elon Musk commented on this. Here's a tweet on your screen from Elon Musk talking about this GameStop situation. Pretty incredible. Elon Musk chimed in. Chamath Palihapati chimed in. Mark Cuban chimed in. And many, many, many experts on CNBC also have continued to chime in. And this made its way to the highest level of government. House Speaker Pelosi chimed in today. Let's hear comments from House Speaker Pelosi.
More questions. Does Congress have any role in this GameStop stock manipulation issue that's going on Wall Street right now?
Well, I understand. Interesting, isn't it? I understand that the administration is taking a look. The SEC is taking a look at what that is. But we'll all be reviewing it. But interesting. It's interesting. Yeah.
So, folks, what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that something like this is here to stay because access to data is now universal. Now, should you try and get access to stocks that rise like this? I mean, listen, you can do whatever you want. It's not my style. It's not something I do because I find it extremely risky. I'm the kind of investor that buys a stock and asks myself, what do I think the price is going to be like in 10 years? And I try and buy the stock at a price that makes sense to me. I'm not going to pay more than what the stock is worth. So that is what I do. Also, I believe that as good stocks appreciate, as they pay dividends, and as you do options trading, you should be able to make anywhere between 30% to 50% returns on your money. And if you compound money, if you take $10,000 and you compound it at 48% or at 50% over 10 years, you will have close to $1.5 million. So again, think about this. $10,000 compounded at 50% over 10 years is close to $1.5 million. To be exact, it's $1.341 million. To be exact, it's $1,341,788. Pretty incredible if you really think about that. So I'm a big fan of compounding money. That's my approach. Let me know what you think of this video in the comment section below. You'll get a link to all of our resources in the description section below. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. This right here is some information about me. You'll learn more about who I am, what my journey has been like, and why you should listen to me. You're watching the Ignition Time channel. I welcome you to our channel. The thing that's unique about this channel is we cover the country, we cover the economy, and by extension, the impact that all of these things have on your money. I encourage you to please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. That helps out the YouTube algorithm. Also, tell your friends and family about us. Share this video with just 2 friends or family members. That would be amazing. One of the unique things about our channel is we always provide a link in the description section below to all our resources because you can dig deeper into these news stories for yourself. We do all the research so you don't have to, and that is our commitment to you on behalf of me and my team and everyone behind the scenes at this channel. We release videos every single day. We release videos that help you understand the state of politics. What's going on in the White House with President Biden? What's going on in the House with House Speaker Pelosi? What's going on in the Senate with the new Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and the bane of his existence, the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell? You will understand everything that's going on in the complex chessboard, this chess sequence where the key players are the President, the House Speaker, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell. I help you understand what's going on in the complex world of Washington, D.C. so you can make sense of all of this for yourself. Follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is ignition_time. That's ignition_time. Follow us on Twitter as well. Our Twitter handle is also ignition_time. That's ignition_time. Here's my Twitter handle. You'll see that our Twitter community is growing very rapidly. I invite you to join us on our Twitter community because you'll see what I'm reading, you'll be able to engage with me, and I retweet the news in real time. So you'll be able to follow along all the breaking news with me on Twitter. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget, you can get on our SMS list. Just get your cell phone out, send a text message with the word ignition or with the word time to 70,000. That's 70000. You'll get added to SMS alerts list. You'll get important news, breaking news from Ignition Time. You can also get on our email list. Simply go to ignitiontime.com/alerts. That's ignitiontime.com/alerts, and then you'll be able to get on our email list. You can opt out of the SMS list or the email list at any point in time that you want. No worries about that. Also, keep in mind that sometimes YouTube does not always send out notifications on time. So all you have to do is simply bookmark youtube.com/ignition time. That's youtube.com/ignition time. Simply bookmark that and you'll be able to visit the homepage of our channel and check out our videos at any point in time that you want. Please comment below, become a part of our growing community. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Thanks. Bye.